The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. It came through channels that humanity had only discovered 3 years ago, carried by signals that bent through space in ways human scientists still did not fully understand. But the meaning was clear enough. The Volanti Dominion, rulers of 12 star systems and masters of ancient technology, invited humanity to discuss membership. It was an honor, the message said. A rare opportunity. Only the most promising species received such invitations. There were rules, of course. Send a small shuttle. No more than 5 representatives. No weapons. This was standard protocol. Every species followed it. The Volanthi had been doing this for thousands of years, in the great council chamber on Earth. Leaders from every nation gathered to debate. Some wanted to accept immediately. The Volanthi controlled trade routes that could make humanity rich. Their technology was centuries ahead. Their protection would keep Earth safe from the dangers of a hostile galaxy. Others urged caution. Humanity knew almost nothing about the Volanthi. 2 species had accepted similar invitations in the past 50 years. Neither had been heard from since. Captain Park Do-hyun sat in the back of the chamber, watching the politicians argue. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. He commanded the UES Indomitable, the largest and most powerful warship humanity had ever built. 800 meters of metal and fury, carrying 3,000 crew members and enough firepower to crack a small moon. He was not supposed to be at this meeting. Captains did not attend political discussions. But Admiral Ko Sung-gi had asked him to come, and when the Admiral asked, you did not say no. The debate went on for 3 days. Park listened. He learned that the intelligence division had been studying the Volanthi for years. They had gathered fragments of information from other species. Traders and refugees who whispered stories in dark corners of space stations. The stories were not good. On the 3rd day, Admiral Ko called Park into a private room. We are going to accept the invitation, the Admiral said. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and white hair. She had built the Earth fleet from nothing, ship by ship, during the hardest years of human expansion. But we are not sending a shuttle. Park understood immediately. The Indomitable. Yes. The Admiral handed him a datapad. Full crew. Weapons charged but not armed. You will represent Earth. They asked for 5 people in a small ship. They asked for Earth to come. Earth is coming. The Admiral smiled, but there was no humor in it. Those 2 species that disappeared? They followed the rules. They sent their best diplomats in their smallest ships. They showed trust. They showed weakness. Park looked at the datapad. It contained everything the intelligence division knew about the Volanthi. It was not much. They will see this as a threat. They will see this as a message. Humanity does not bare its throat to strangers. The Admiral stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city stretched toward the horizon, millions of lights in the darkness. We may be young, Captain. We may be weak compared to empires that have ruled for millennia. But we are not fools. And we are not prey. Lieutenant Commander Yoon-hana received her orders the next morning. She was the ship's chief diplomatic officer, a position that usually involved negotiating supply contracts and smoothing over incidents when crew members got into fights at space stations. Now she was told she would be speaking for all of humanity. She spent the journey studying everything known about Volanthi culture, their language, their history, their values. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But she prepared anyway, because that was what humans did. The Indomitable traveled for 6 days through hyperspace. The crew knew something important was happening, but Captain Park kept the details quiet. He did not want fear spreading through the ship. He needed his people calm and confident when they arrived. On the 6th day, they dropped out of hyperspace at the border station. The Volanthi were waiting. Their station was enormous, a ring of metal and crystal that circled a dead moon. Dozens of ships surrounded it, sleek vessels with curved hulls and glowing engines. They were beautiful in a cold, sharp way. Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the view screen. His crew was silent. They had all seen alien ships before, but never this many. Never this powerful. "They are scanning us," reported Ensign Beak Jisu from the communications station. She was young, barely 25, but she had a gift for alien languages that had made her invaluable. Multiple frequencies. They seemed confused. Park nodded. He had expected this. "Open a channel." The view screen flickered, and then a face appeared. It was not human. The Volanthi had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, smooth gray skin, and a mouthful of small, sharp teeth. They wore robes of deep purple, the color of royalty in their culture. "I am Ambassador Krulvith," the alien said. Its voice was translated by the ship's computer, but Park could hear the original sounds underneath, clicks and hisses that human throats could never produce. "You are not what we expected." Park stepped forward. "I am Captain Park Do-hyun of the United Earthship Indomitable. We received your invitation. We invited a diplomatic shuttle. 5 representatives." Krulvith's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "You have brought a warship. 3,000 crew. This is a violation of protocol." Lieutenant Commander Yoon-hana moved to stand beside her captain. She spoke clearly, her voice steady. "You invited Earth, Ambassador. Earth is here." There was a long silence. On the view screen, Park could see other Volanthi moving behind the ambassador, speaking quickly to each other in their clicking language. They had not expected this. They did not know how to respond. "This could be considered an act of war," Krulvith said finally. Park did not flinch. "It could, but it is not. Our weapons are not armed. We come in peace. We simply come prepared." "Prepared for what?" "For whatever is necessary." Another silence. Park watched the ambassador carefully. He saw something in those 4 alien eyes, something he recognized from years of facing enemies across battlefields and negotiating tables. It was fear. But it was not fear of the Indomitable, not fear of human weapons or human soldiers. It was fear of the unknown. The Volanthi had been doing this for thousands of years. They had a system. They had protocols. Species came when called, bowed when expected, and bent when pushed. Humanity had not read that script. "You will follow our escort to the throne of stars," Krulvith said at last. "The High Council will decide what to do with you." The view screen went dark. A moment later, 40 Volanthi warships began to move into formation around the Indomitable. Commander No Tai-woo, the ship's tactical officer, looked at his captain. He was an older man with scars on his hands from the Mars Rebellion, a soldier who had fought in the worst wars humanity had ever known. "Orders, sir?" Park sat down in his command chair. "Follow them. Maintain normal operations. No battle stations, sir. They want a scared commander. They want us to panic and make mistakes." Park looked around the bridge at his crew, at the young faces and the old ones, at the humans who had traveled so far from home. "We are not going to give them what they want. We are going to show them who we are." The Indomitable forward, surrounded by enemies, flying toward the heart of an alien empire. And Captain Park Do-hyun smiled. The journey to the throne of stars took 4 days. 4 days surrounded by 40 Volanthi warships, their weapons pointed at the Indomitable from every direction. 4 days of tension that pressed against the walls of the ship like water against a submarine. Captain Park Do-hyun ordered the crew to maintain normal routines. They ate meals at regular times. They exercised in the ship's gymnasium. They played cards and watched movies and argued about sports teams back on Earth. Some of them even laughed. The Volanti watched everything. Their sensors probed the Indomitable constantly, mapping every room, counting every person, measuring every weapon. They sent small drones that flew alongside the human ship, recording through tiny cameras. They wanted to know everything about these strange visitors who had broken every rule. On the third day, Lieutenant Commander Yunhana noticed something odd. "Captain, they're not just scanning our technology. They are scanning us." Park looked up from his morning coffee. "Explain." "Biological readings, heart rates, brain activity, stress hormones." Hana pulled up the data on her tablet. "They have equipment that can read our bodies from a distance. They are measuring our fear." Ensign Bichisu leaned over from her station. "I have been monitoring their communications. They keep using a word I do not recognize. I think it translates to something like prey response or submission signature. They are looking for it in our crew." Park considered this. It made a terrible kind of sense. If the Volanti had been conquering species for thousands of years, they would have learned to recognize weakness. Fear was a weapon you could use against an enemy. But first, you had to measure it. "Tell the crew," Park said. "Everyone needs to know what the Volanti are looking for. Everyone needs to stay calm." The message spread through the ship within hours. 3,000 humans learned that their bodies were being watched, that every fast heartbeat and nervous swallow was being recorded and studied. Some of them became more afraid, but most of them became angry instead. Humans did not like being treated as prey. On the fourth day, the Throne of Stars appeared on the VIEWSCREN. It was the largest structure any of them had ever seen. A massive ring of metal and crystal that wrapped around a gas giant, glittering with lights from billions of windows. Ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Thousands of vessels from dozens of species, all of them small compared to the station itself. "Beautiful," whispered Ensign Beak. "Dangerous," said Commander No Taiwu. His hand rested on the console beside him, close to the weapons controls. "Sir, I am reading weapon platforms throughout that station. Enough firepower to destroy a fleet." Park nodded. "They want us to see that. They want us impressed and afraid." He stood up from his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to dock at the Volanti capital. Remember who you are. Remember what you represent. And remember that every eye in that station is going to be watching you." The Indomitable docked at a port designed for smaller ships. The human vessel barely fit, its hull scraping against the edges of the docking bay. The Lanti workers stared up at it with all four eyes wide. Ambassador Krilvith was waiting at the airlock, along with 30 armed guards. "High Counselor Threx will inspect your vessel before any negotiations begin." Park raised an eyebrow. "Inspect?" "It is protocol." The ambassador's mouth curved in something that might have been a smile. "Surely you understand protocol." The message was clear. "You broke our rules. Now we will break yours." Park glanced at Hannah. She gave a tiny nod. They had prepared for this. "Of course," Park said. "The High Counselor is welcome aboard." Threx arrived 1 hour later. He was old, even by Volanti standards, his gray skin marked with patterns that showed centuries of service to the Dominion. He moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp, darting from face to face, room to room, missing nothing. He brought scanners. He brought guards. He brought questions designed to insult. "Your ship is primitive," Threx said as they walked through the engineering section. "Our vessels abandoned this type of reactor 300 years ago. It works well enough for us," Park replied. "Your weapons are crude. Kinetic projectiles? Explosive warheads? We use energy systems that your scientists could not understand in 1,000 years." Perhaps. But our weapons can still kill. Threx stopped walking. He turned to face Park, all four eyes focused with an intensity that made the guards behind him tense. Is that a threat, Captain? It is a fact, High Counselor. I do not make threats. They stared at each other for a long moment. Threx's scanners hummed quietly, measuring Park's heart rate, his breathing, the chemicals in his blood. Looking for fear, Park thought about his wife back on Earth. He thought about his daughter, who was 7 years old and loved to paint pictures of spaceships. He thought about the 3,000 people on this ship who trusted him with their lives. He was afraid. Of course, he was afraid. Only a fool would not be afraid. But humans had spent millions of years learning to hide their fear. They had hunted predators larger than themselves. They had faced enemies across battlefields while their hearts screamed at them to run. They had developed the ability to keep their faces calm even when every instinct told them to panic. Threx single quotes, as scanners could not read that. Your species is unusual, the High Counselor said finally. Most visitors to this station show clear signs of submission by now. We are not most species. No, Threx's eyes narrowed. You are not. The inspection continued for another 2 hours. Threx looked at everything. He asked questions about human history, human biology, human psychology. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana answered most of them, her voice patient and professional, revealing nothing that would give the Volanti an advantage. Near the end, Threx ordered a demonstration. His guards moved quickly, surrounding the human delegation. The lights in the corridor flickered and went dark. Red warning lights flashed. Your ship is now locked down, Threx announced. Our forces have taken control of your systems. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are offline. You are completely at our mercy. It was a lie. Park knew it was a lie because Chief Petty Officer Shin Yuna had spent the last 4 days strengthening the Indomitable's computer defenses. But the display was impressive. The darkness, the flashing lights, the sudden appearance of armed guards, it was designed to trigger panic. The humans did not panic. Commander. No Tai Wu crossed his arms and looked bored. Ensign Beek Jisoo yawned. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana checked her fingernails as if she was waiting for a late bus. And Captain Park Do-yoon laughed. It was a genuine laugh. Warm and surprised, as if someone had told him a good joke. High Counselor, if you wanted to test us, you could have simply asked. Threx stared at him. The guards looked uncertain. This was not the reaction they had been trained to expect. Restore normal lighting, Threx ordered. The darkness disappeared. The warning lights stopped. You are strange creatures, humans. We have heard that before. I wonder if your courage is real, or if you are simply too foolish to understand your situation. Park smiled. I wonder that myself sometimes. But I have learned that it does not matter. Fear is useful when it keeps you alive. It is useless when it makes you bow to tyrants. Outside the ship, the Volanti fleet was performing attack formations. Their weapons were charging. Their shields were raised. It was another display of power, designed to terrify the humans watching through the Indomitable's windows. Inside the ship, it was time for lunch. Park led his senior staff to the mess hall. They sat down at their usual tables. They ate the same food they always ate. They talked about the same things they always talked about: family, friends. Whether the ship's cook would ever learn to make decent coffee. Chief Petty Officer Shin Yuna made sure the mess hall cameras were transmitting to the Volanti fleet. 3,000 humans, surrounded by enemies who could destroy them in seconds. Eating lunch and laughing at jokes, Threx watched the footage in his private chambers. His advisors watched with him. They are not afraid, one advisor said. No, Threx agreed. They are not. What do we do? Our entire strategy depends on reading fear, on finding weakness. These creatures show us nothing. Thrax was silent for a long time. He had ruled the Dominion for 200 years. He had absorbed 17 species into the Empire. He had broken the will of populations numbering in the billions. But he had never faced anything like this. "I do not know," he admitted finally. "For the first time in centuries, I do not know what to do." On the Indomitable, Captain Park finished his coffee and looked out the window at the alien fleet. The first test was over. They had passed, but he knew the real challenges were still to come. The cultural exchange meetings began on the second day at the Throne of Stars. That was what the Volanti called them. Cultural exchange. A chance for two species to learn about each other's ways. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana knew better. These were interrogations wearing the mask of diplomacy. The Volanti negotiators sat across from her at a long table made of some material that looked like glass. They asked questions about Earth. How many people lived there? How was the government structured? What were the main sources of conflict between nations? Where were the military bases located? Hannah answered carefully. She gave them information they could find anywhere. Facts that any species with basic intelligence gathering could discover. She revealed nothing important. And she did something they did not expect. She asked questions back. How long has the Dominion existed? 3,000 years, the lead negotiator replied. He seemed uncomfortable with the reversal. And how many species have joined during that time? 17 have been welcomed into our family. Welcomed. Hannah smiled pleasantly. That is an interesting word. I have noticed that we have not met any representatives from these species. Where are they? The negotiators looked at each other. They are integrated. They live among us now, working for the good of all. I see. And do they have their own governments? Their own militaries? Their own voices in your council? Silence. Hannah leaned forward. I ask because we want to understand what joining the Dominion would mean for humanity. Would we keep our identity? Our freedom? Or would we be integrated? The session ended shortly after that. The Volanti claimed they had other appointments. Back on the Indomitable, Hana reported to Captain Park. They are hiding something. Every time I push for details about the absorbed species, they change the subject or end the meeting. Park nodded. Chief Shin has found something too. Chief Petty Officer Shin Yuna was the head of the ship's intelligence unit. She was a small woman with quick hands and a mind that never stopped working. She had spent the last 2 days intercepting and decoding Volanti communications. They are talking to someone else, Shin reported. Someone outside this station. I have not been able to identify who, but the transmissions are encrypted at the highest level. Military grade. Whatever they are discussing, they do not want anyone to know. Can you break the encryption? Not yet, but I'm working on it. That night, something unexpected happened. Hannah was walking through the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars, when an elderly Volanti approached her. The alien was female, her gray skin marked with age, her 4 eyes clouded with time. You are the human diplomat, the elder said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I am. My name is Yoon Hana. I am Melvary. Was a historian. I kept the records of the Dominion's past. She looked around nervously. I should not be speaking to you. If they knew. Hannah kept her voice calm. What do you want to tell me? Melvary hesitated. Then she pressed a small device into Hannah's hand. Everything you need to know is here. The truth about the Dominion. The truth about what happens to species that accept our invitations. Why are you giving this to me? The old historian's eyes were sad. Because I am tired of lies. Because I have watched 17 civilizations disappear, their histories erased, their people scattered. And because your species is the first in centuries that might be able to do something about it. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of aliens that filled the observation deck. Hana returned to the ship. Immediately, the data on the device was extensive. It took hours to decode and translate, but when they finished, the room was silent. "It is not an alliance," Park said finally. "It is an empire." The records showed everything. The Volanthi did not invite species to join them as equals. They invited them to be consumed. The pattern was always the same. First came the invitation, then the testing, designed to find weaknesses, to measure fear. Then the negotiations, which were really just distractions while the Volanthi gathered intelligence. And then came the absorption. Representatives were captured and tortured for information about their homeworlds, military secrets, government structures, cultural weaknesses. Once the Volanthi knew everything they needed, they invaded. It was quick and brutal. The populations were scattered across the Dominion, separated from each other, forced to work as laborers and servants. Their languages were forbidden. Their traditions were erased. Within a few generations, they forgot who they had been. The last two species to send diplomatic shuttles, the Marvali and the Drenith, had been destroyed 5 and 12 years ago. Their homeworlds were now mining colonies. Their people were slaves in all but name. Earth was next, Commander No Taiwu said, his voice tight with anger. They were planning to do the same thing to us. Yes. Park stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of the Throne of Stars glittered in the darkness. But we changed their plans. The Indomitable changed their plans. What do we do now? Ensign Big Jisu asked. If we leave, they will just try again. They will wait until we are not ready, and then they will attack. And if we stay, we are surrounded by an enemy fleet with no hope of reinforcement. Shin added. Park was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the 17 species that had been absorbed. The Marvali, the Drenith, the Skethany, whose delegates he had seen walking through the station with empty eyes and bowed heads. All of them had been proud once. All of them had been free. There is a third option, he said finally. Hana looked at him. Sir, we are not the only ones trapped here. 17 species have been absorbed by the Dominion. 17 populations live as slaves, scattered and forgotten. But they are still alive. And if they knew the truth, if they knew that someone was finally willing to stand up to the Volanthi, they might remember who they used to be. Commander No shook his head. Captain, with respect, we cannot start a revolution. We have 3,000 people. The Volanthi have billions. I am not talking about a revolution. Not yet. I am talking about a message. Park turned to face his senior staff. The Volanthi have maintained their power through secrecy and fear. They break species by making them feel alone, by making them believe that resistance is impossible. We can change that. How? Park smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We are going to ask for a meeting with the full Dominion Assembly. Every species. Every delegate. And we are going to tell them the truth. Shin Yuna raised an eyebrow. They will never allow it. They will. Because refusing would make them look weak. Thrax cannot afford to appear afraid of a single human ship. His power depends on the illusion of absolute control. Park sat back down in his chair. Prepare the request, Lieutenant Commander Yoon. Make it formal. Make it respectful. And make sure every species on this station knows that we asked. Hana nodded slowly. And if Threx says no? He will not. He thinks he can control the situation. He thinks he can twist any meeting to his advantage. Park's eyes were hard. He does not understand what we are. He sees a young species, primitive technology, a single ship surrounded by enemies. He does not see the thing that makes humanity dangerous. What is that, sir? Park looked at his crew. at the humans who had traveled across the galaxy to face an empire. We do not give up. We do not stop fighting. And when we see injustice, we do not look away. He stood up again. The Volanthi have been predators for 3,000 years. They have forgotten what it is like to meet a species that fights back. We are going to remind them. Outside the window, the Volanthi fleet patrolled in perfect formation. They did not know it yet, but everything was about to change. The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room Captain Park Do-hyun had ever seen. It was built into the heart of the Throne of Stars, a massive dome of crystal and metal where the representatives of the Dominion gathered to discuss matters of state. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, each section reserved for a different species. Most of those seats were occupied by Volanthi officials, but scattered among them were the delegates of the absorbed species. The Skethani, with their long limbs and silver skin. The Mavali, short and broad, their faces marked with ritual scars. The Drenith, whose bodies flowed like water given shape. A dozen other species Park did not recognize, all of them sitting in silence, their eyes cast down. They looked defeated. They looked broken. But they were here, and that meant they could still listen. High Counselor Threx stood at the center of the platform. He had agreed to this meeting, just as Park had predicted. He could not refuse without appearing weak. But he had prepared carefully, surrounding the human delegation with guards, filling the hall with loyal supporters, controlling every aspect of the presentation. "You may speak," Threx announced, his voice echoing through the vast space. "But remember that you speak as guests of the Dominion. Guests who have already violated our protocols. Guests who stand here only by our mercy." Captain Park stepped forward onto the platform. He was alone. Hannah and the others waited at the edge of the hall, watched by armed guards. If this went wrong, Park would be the first to die. He looked around at the assembled species. Thousands of faces, alien and strange, watching him with curiosity and fear and hope. He took a deep breath. "I am Captain Park Do-hyun of Earth," he began. His voice was clear and calm, amplified by the hall systems so that everyone could hear. "We came here because you invited us. We came in a warship because we are not fools. And we stayed, even when you threatened us, because there are things more important than our own safety." Threx made a dismissive gesture. "Lovely words. But words do not change the reality of your situation. You are one ship against an empire." "You are right. We are one ship. We have 3,000 crew members. Our technology is primitive by your standards. If you chose to destroy us, we could not stop you." Park paused. "But before you make that choice, I want to tell you a story. We did not come here for stories. No, you came here to watch me beg. To see humans show the fear that every other species has shown before us." Park smiled slightly. "I'm sorry to disappoint you." He turned away from Threx and addressed the absorbed delegates directly. "The story I want to tell is about Earth, about my species, about what we have done to each other over thousands of years." The hall was silent. Even Threx did not interrupt. "Humans have committed terrible crimes against each other," Park continued. "We have enslaved entire populations. We have conquered nations and erased cultures. We have done things that should never be forgiven." He paused. "I tell you this not to boast, but to be honest. We are not perfect. We have been the villains of our own history many times." "Then why should we respect you?" Threx demanded. "Because we learned." Park's voice grew stronger. "We looked at the evil we had done, and we decided to be better. Not because someone forced us. Not because we were afraid. But because we understood that oppression is wrong. That every thinking being deserves freedom. That empires built on slavery will always, eventually, fall." He pointed at Threx. You have built your dominion on the broken bodies of 17 species. You have erased their histories, scattered their people, stolen their futures. And you call it integration. You call it family. Threx's 4 eyes narrowed with anger. You know nothing about our ways. I know everything. Park reached into his uniform and pulled out the data device Malvery had given to Hannah. A historian gave this to us. Someone who is tired of lies. Someone who remembered what the Dominion used to be before it became a machine for consuming civilizations. The hall erupted in noise. Valanthi officials shouted in protest. Guards moved toward Park, but he stood his ground, holding the device high. This contains records of every absorption, every invasion, every population scattered and enslaved. The Marvali, the Drenith, the Skethany, all of them conquered by deception, all of them broken by the species that promised to welcome them. Silence him. Threx commanded, but before the guards could reach Park, a voice rose from the absorbed delegates. It was thin and trembling, but it carried across the hall like a bell. Is it true? Everyone turned. A Skethany delegate had risen from his seat. His name was Kilix, Park learned later. He was old and frail, a puppet placed in the assembly to give the illusion of representation. He had not spoken out of turn in 50 years. Is it true? Kilix asked again. Were we conquered? Were we enslaved? Is that why we cannot remember our own history? Sit down, Threx ordered. You speak without permission. Permission? Kilix's voice grew stronger. I am a representative of my people. I have the right to ask questions. Your people are part of the Dominion now. Your rights are what we say they are. No. Kilix stood straighter. His silver skin seemed to glow in the light of the hall. No, I do not accept that. Not anymore. Commander No Taiwu had been watching from the edge of the hall. When the guards moved toward Kilix, he moved faster. In 3 quick strides, he crossed the floor and placed himself between the old Skethany and the armed. Valanthi, 1 human against 12 guards. He did not draw a weapon. He did not raise his hands. He simply stood there, a wall of flesh and bone between the oppressor and the oppressed. Touch him, No said quietly, and you will have to go through me first. The guards hesitated. They were trained to deal with fear, with submission, with species that bent under pressure. They had no protocols for this. No training for a human who stood in their way, not with weapons, but with will. Threx stared at the scene. His mind was racing. The assembly was watching. The absorbed species were watching. Everything he did in the next few moments would be remembered. High Counselor. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana stepped onto the platform beside Captain Park. Her voice was steady and professional. We do not want a war. We did not come here to start a revolution. We came to offer a different way. A different way? Threx laughed bitterly. You come to my station, insult my ancestors, and encourage rebellion among my subjects. And now you speak of peace? Yes. Hannah met his eyes without flinching. Because war would destroy both of us. You have 200 warships. We have one. You would win eventually. But the cost would be enormous. And while you were fighting us, what would happen to your empire? How many absorbed species would remember who they used to be? She gestured at the assembly. At the absorbed delegates, who were watching with new light in their eyes. At the Valanthi officials, who were beginning to look uncertain. The truth is out now, Hana continued. We have broadcast everything. This meeting, the historical records, all of it to every ship in this station. Every species here knows what the Dominion really is. You cannot put that back in the box. Threx was silent. His guards waited for orders. The whole assembly held its breath. There will be a recess, Threx announced finally. This matter will be discussed by the council. In private. He turned and walked out of the hall. His guards followed, leaving Commander No still standing in front of Kilix. The old Scathling looked up at the human who had defended him. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you risk your life for someone you do not know?" No smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a soldier who had seen too much. "Because that is what humans do. We protect each other. And sometimes we protect strangers too." He offered his hand to the old alien. After a moment's hesitation, Kilix took a dot in the hall of the Dominion's greatest power. A human and a slave stood together, and somewhere, watching through hidden cameras, the people of 17 worlds saw it happen. The recess was a trap. Captain Park Do-hyun had known it would be. Thrax needed time to gather his forces, to plan his revenge, to turn the situation back to his advantage. The humans had embarrassed him in front of the entire Dominion. That could not go unpunished. 20 hours after the assembly meeting, the Volanthe war fleet arrived. Chief Petty Officer Shin Yuna reported the numbers in a flat voice. 217 ships, Captain. Battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. The Indomitable was still docked at the station, surrounded by enemies on all sides. There was no escape. There was no rescue coming. Earth's nearest fleet was 6 days away. Park stood on the bridge and watched the enemy ships take position. His crew was silent, waiting for orders. 3,000 people, looking to him for hope. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the stars she would never see, the future she might never have. He thought about everything humanity had built, and everything they might still build if they survived. Then he thought about the 17 species who had been absorbed. The Scathany who had spoken up in the assembly. The Morvali and Drenith whose worlds had been conquered. All of them watching, waiting to see what would happen next. "Shin," Park said quietly. "The quantum transmitter. Is it still active?" "Yes, sir. We have been broadcasting continuously since we arrived." "Good." Park sat down in his command chair. "Make sure every unaligned species in the sector is receiving our signal. Every ship, every station, every world that has not yet fallen under Volanthe control. They need to see what happens here today." Thrax's face appeared on the view screen. The High Counselor looked calm now, confident. The panic of the assembly had been replaced by cold satisfaction. "Captain Park, your performance yesterday was impressive. You surprised me. That does not happen often. I try my best. Unfortunately, surprise is not enough. You are surrounded. Your ship is trapped. And you have made yourself an enemy of the greatest power in this region of space." Thrax leaned forward. "You will be made an example. Humanity will be made an example. After today, no species will ever dare to challenge the Dominion again." Park nodded slowly. "Before you destroy us, High Counselor, I want to show you something. More tricks? More speeches?" "No, just a message." Park gestured to Ensign Beek Jisoo. She pressed a button, and a new image appeared on the view screen beside Thrax's face. It was Admiral Ko Sunji, broadcasting from Earth's Second Fleet. "High Counselor Thrax," the Admiral said. Her voice was cold and hard. "I am Admiral Ko Sungi of the United Earth Navy. I have been watching your station for the past several days. I have seen everything." Thrax's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "You are in Earth space." "You cannot. We are in hyperspace, High Counselor. We have been traveling since the moment the Indomitable arrived at your border. 47 warships. Not enough to defeat your fleet, I admit, but enough to make any battle very, very expensive." The view screen split again, showing the sensor display. 47 human ships were emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were small compared to the Volanthe vessels, but they were there. Earth had come for its people. "If you destroy the Indomitable," Admiral Ko continued, "we will fight. We will lose, probably, but we will take a great many of your ships with us. And more importantly, every species in this sector will see you do it. They will see that you are afraid of one human ship. They will see that you had to bring 200 warships to destroy 3,000 humans. And they will wonder what would happen if they stood up to you too. Threx was silent. His advisors were talking rapidly behind him, their clicking voices rising in panicked thought. But the real victory was not military. It never had been. While the fleets faced each other, something else was happening. On 17 worlds scattered across the Dominion, populations were watching the broadcast. They were seeing the Indomitable stand alone against impossible odds. They were seeing Killick speak out in the assembly. They were seeing Commander No Taiwu stand between a slave and his masters. They were remembering who they used to be. Chief Shin reported it first. "Captain, we are receiving transmissions from the absorbed worlds. The Skethni are sending messages of support. The Marvali are organizing protests. The Dreneth are refusing the work." More reports came in. A Volanthi mining station had been taken over by its workers. A transport ship had changed course, heading for Earth space. Across the Dominion, the first cracks were appearing in an empire that had stood for 3,000 years. Threx saw it too. His face on the view screen had gone pale. "You have not won," he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "This is a temporary disruption. We will restore order. Maybe." Park stood up from his chair. "Or maybe you will spend the next century fighting to hold your empire together. Either way, you have a choice to make right now, High Counselor." "What choice?" "You can destroy us. Kill 3,000 humans, start a war with Earth, and show the galaxy that you rule through fear and violence. You will confirm everything we said about you. Every species will know the truth, and they will hate you for it." Park walked closer to the view screen. His eyes met Threx's, human and alien, predator and predator. "Or you can let us leave. You can accept that humanity will not be absorbed. And you can release any species that no longer wishes to remain in the Dominion." He paused. "The galaxy is watching, High Counselor. Choose wisely." The silence stretched on forever. The fleets hung in space, weapons charged, waiting. Then Threx spoke. "You may leave. Take your ship and go. But this is not over, human. We will remember this. We will come for you eventually. I know." Park smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We will be waiting." The Volanthe fleet pulled back. The Indomitable's engines came to life. Slowly, carefully, the human warship moved away from the station and began its journey home. As they traveled, more messages arrived. 3 species had already requested Earth's protection. 2 more were considering leaving the Dominion entirely. The old historian Melvery had been arrested, but her records were already spreading across the galaxy. Impossible to suppress. Lieutenant Commander Yunhana found Park in his quarters, staring out at the stars. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked. "I do not know." Park turned to look at her. "We made enemies today. Powerful enemies. The Volanthi will not forget what happened here. They will rebuild their fleet, tighten their control, prepare for the next confrontation. Then what did we gain? Hope." Park looked back at the stars. Those 17 species thought they were alone. They thought no one would ever stand up to the Dominion. Now they know that is not true. Now they know that somewhere in the galaxy, there is a species that refuses to bow. Is that enough? It will have to be. Park sighed. "We cannot save everyone, Hana. We cannot fight every battle or right every wrong. But we can send a message. We can show the galaxy that tyranny is not inevitable, that empires can be challenged, that even the smallest voice can be heard." The ship's communication system crackled. Ensign Beak Jisu's voice came through. "Captain, we are receiving a message from an unknown species. They say they have heard about what happened at the Throne of Stars. They want to know if the stories are true. Park and Hannah exchanged looks. What should I tell them, sir? Park walked to the bridge. His crew was waiting, tired but proud, their eyes bright with the knowledge of what they had done. 3,000 humans who had faced an empire and refused to kneel. Tell them the stories are true, Park said. Tell them Earth is ready to talk. And tell them we are on our way. He sat down in his command chair. Around him, his crew began to prepare for another journey. Another challenge. Another chance to show the galaxy what humanity could be. The indomitable. Jumped to hyperspace dot and somewhere in the darkness between stars. The message spread. Humanity was here. Humanity would not be ignored. And humanity would never, ever stop fighting for what was right. The universe had changed today. And it would never be the same again.